to the Baxter story. As we had with Derek, we are doing a single area just for Baxter. So, let's get into it. Today we are doing sightseeing. So, let's wait for OBS to pick this up and get into it. I keep forgetting that when I do my recordings, I need to sort that out. Oh well. You are perched on the couch in your living room, doing nothing in particular. My album was also in the game. It was a quintessential summer afternoon. The weather was warm, and the mood was lazy. So far, it shapes up to be a pleasant day, if somewhat uneventful. No plans and no obligations beyond a few usual chores. Liz had already flitted off, enjoying herself. She left in the morning, carrying a mysteriously heavy bag. You hadn't bothered asking her what she was doing, or why it needed a sack that clattered when it moved. She probably wouldn't be home till late. Your moms both had the day off, and like you, had been using their freedom to do nothing of import. The group of you finished up cleaning from your shared lunch, and Mom struck up a conversation.
So?
Wow, what's next? Your mind was blank. You let the question hang, assuming Ma would be the one to reply, and then staring at your phone out of habit. And right then, the screen lit up, presenting you with the potential idea. A text notification had come in. Baxter's name displayed itself. He sent more messages after the first. You unlocked your phone to see it all. Hello, and good afternoon. I'm intending to go sightseeing and would love it if you could join me. You're quite welcome to invite anyone else along as well. Your phone buzzed one more time with an additional note. Sincerely, your friend Baxter. You sorted out the screen. His text style read more like a formal letter, written with a quill pen rather a text.
Oh?
Did your friends text you? Ma smiled at you with a raised eyebrow. Gluing your face to a phone for so long must have been a big tip-off. One friend did. Max wants to go sightseeing today. Wow, perfect timing. Yes, that's nice. Baxter Ward seems like a lovely young man.
Not bad.
He's a step up or two from the Donalds, that's for sure. Neither Mom nor Ma had spent a lot of time around Baxter, as far as you were aware. They met early in summer, something unavoidable on this street, and had a few encounters since. I wonder where he's from. Ma didn't look to you for an answer, or her wife. You couldn't add to that topic, and assumed no one else in the room knew either. It was a wonderment for the universe alone. Mom still pressed her lips together and thought. No clue. But what I'm curious is about what he's studying in college. He's on break from school, isn't he?
Well...
Yes, he did mention he was on an off semester, but not more than that. Once the curiosity train left the station, there was no stopping it. The two traded questions back and forth, whispering with growing steam. There was someone on their street who was a stranger, a situation that hadn't occurred in a decade. What do you think his family's like? He's here all by himself. Again, none of you could enlighten the others. You had scarcely spent more time with Baxter than your parents, and you realized he hadn't been forthcoming with basic details. You found his mystery intriguing. It was exciting to know there was so much more to him to figure out. You refocused on your phone and the formal message that had yet to get a reply. You answered him in a similar fashion. Feeling inspired by his stiff texting alone, you couldn't resist having a little fun. Good tidings, Sir Baxter. of course I would be delighted to join you this fine day. I have finished my luncheon, so we'll venture forth to your dwellings. You hit send, aware that the message wasn't exactly a high society Victorian letter. It ended up more medieval fantasy scroll, but you'd probably get the joke. It didn't take long at all for Baxter to continue the conversation. Brave Knight Callie, that is heartening. I shall see you post-haste. My highest regards. Yeah, you got it. You smiled and turned to your moms. They had moved on to wondering if Baxter had a part-time job. Probably not. Both of them were concluding. Gotta go. I'm heading to Baxter's. Have fun, kiddo. Yes, do that. Ma's grin was sweet as honey, being used to a trap. You could see the ulterior motive from a mile away.
Please?
And if you happen to find anything out about our neighbor, maybe think about telling your poor moms when you get back? Lonnie! Despite everything, Mom appeared amused at her wife's blatant attempt at info digging. Well, I'd be interested to hear it too, if Baxter doesn't mind his mystification being cleared up. Why don't you just invite him over and interrogate him yourselves? Mal looked mocked aghast at the very idea.
Goodness.
We can't do that.
That's a shame.
He's a young man trying to enjoy his vacation. He should be out and about, not spending his limited time entertaining us old moms in our kitchen. Ma slumped her shoulders while expressing her limitations in this snooping matter. Though, she immediately perked back up. It's different if he's making a friend his own age. If you don't want to ask or it doesn't come up, of course that's fine. I'm only saying that if you do or it does, that I'd be curious to hear about it. I accept the mission. I won't let you down. Roger that.
Love you.
Thank you for indulging us, sweetie. I won't keep you any longer. Go have a wonderful day.
See you later.
Take care. Bye. You have fun too. Maybe you can find other secrets to dig into. You have gathered your phone, wallet, a water bottle, and a few other odds and ends you imagine might come in handy during an unspecific outing. You left the condo, your formerly normal but boring day rocketing off into an unknown direction. Baxter tended to have that kind of effect on things. Once outside, you crossed the street diagonally to reach Baxter's place. You found the doorbell and pressed it down. His doorbell was so much more reasonably placed. A second later, the man you wanted to see opened the door with a grin. From his quick response, you knew he had to have been standing by. You had announced you'd be there, and he was ready for it.
Hello.
Hello, Callie. Thank you for coming. Hey, Baxter. Thanks for having me. At Baxter's obvious pleasure at your attention, you smiled in return. He'd stepped out of his condo and closed the door behind him to stand by you. I appreciate you agreeing to so last minute. However, if you do have prior arrangements, this can be done another day. Sightseeing is my usual itinerary, after all. I didn't have any plans, really. There was nothing to do.
Oh?
Ah, in that case, I'm glad today was the afternoon I asked. I've stopped in at least one scenic spot, tried a new restaurant, or browsed an unfamiliar shop nearly every day since I've been here so far. I've always had to go on my own. So, this will be a special trip. Whoa, that's impressive. Thank you. I've only had a few short visits to California in my life. Even then, I was underage and supervised by parents or guardians. He raised an eyebrow, and his voice took on a delighted tone. We saw each other on one of those rare occasions where I was in state. Mountain structures were controlling the schedule at that time.
Is that fine?
This summer is my first chance to truly experience what the area has for myself. It's also not going to last forever, so I would rather not waste my opportunities. His bold proclamation reminded you of how fleeting his presence really was in everyone's life. Exactly as he suddenly appeared, it wouldn't be too much longer until he'd vanish back to wherever he came from. He was impossible to pin down. And I'm not wasting my chance to spend a day with you.
That's wonderful.
How gratifying. I was thinking the same thing. He locked his door smoothly and tucked the key into his pocket. You are doing me quite the favor by accompanying me. His shoulders loosened, and he directed a soft glance towards you. And, if you wouldn't mind, this feels like a good chance for the two of us to get to know each other better.
My pleasure.
Please query me at your leisure. If there's anything you ever want to ask, I'm an open book in your hands. It could have stopped there, and you would have expected it to end on a formal bow. But the exceedingly official-sounding offer was flipped into something coy and full of possibility. There are many things I would like to know about you. You can ask me whatever, too.
Thank you.
That's a gracious offer. I'll take you up on it. He voiced no questions yet, but you knew with his grin that would only be a matter of his patience. Need to learn English. Instead of asking him personal information, you needed to use your question and ask an authority for something else first. Where were you thinking of going sightseeing? Baxter placed his hand on his chin, considering. Ideally, the first stop would be your choice, since you're considering joining me today. I might as well take advantage of your local expertise. After that, I can take you to a place that possibly even you haven't been to yet. I have a rental car, so it is no worry if you want to go somewhere that's too far to walk to. My choice will certainly require driving. I'm positive you stepped on every inch of this town.
What do you think?
Does that sound agreeable? Letting you pick the place first and following it up with somewhere you haven't been before, despite living here for almost your whole life? What did you think you missed? Maybe it was the overconfidence of a tourist. Maybe it was something trickier, but he caught you off guard again. With Baxter's promise to tell you whatever you wanted to know, you hadn't prepared for him to still be so hard to read. You should have known he wouldn't actually get straightforward, no matter how direct he claimed he would act. That'll be great. You'd rather have some sway instead of Baxter playing tour guide all day. Baxter flashes shiny white teeth. Do you have anywhere in mind then? You pondered the request. If there was one place someone like Baxter should go see, what would it be? Inspiration struck. There was no place more iconic around. I do have an idea. Have you gone down the shopping street yet? The shopping street? I don't know what you mean. Given it was minutes on foot, you were worried you might have offered old news, but it didn't come up on the map as anything rather than a few permanent shops. You had to be there to know. It's a row of local shops and stores by the beach. It's right near our neighborhood. Really? His hanging attention encouraged you to continue. It's meant to be fun for visitors. Not at all the typical grocery stores or clothing shops or things like that. Everyone should go there at least once while they're here. Baxter made a grand gesture of waving you on to lead out.
Perfect.
That sounds absolutely perfect. Please, show me the way. You obliged, and the two of you strolled down the inclined street. Neither of you were particularly rushing, and it still took less than 15 minutes to walk down to the spot. He skipped over the cement curb to a worn grey brick road and were there. Tantalizing smells and a mix of attention-grabbing music drifted from the open doors and outdoor stalls. The different songs blended into one new tune, a celebration for your senses. As normal for tourist season, the path bustled with a crowd of excited visitors. Aesthetically, Baxter stood out from the vast majority of colourful tourists, but his enthusiasm matched the faces of all.
I love it.
This is wonderful. Confident you suggested the correct choice, you let out a happy sigh. You continued wondering, but now you let Baxter direct the way. You merely followed along as he explored. He flitted to and from stalls like a monochrome butterfly in a flower garden. Terry had been more correct than she could have known when she made that comparison at the beginning of summer. While you had memories attached to each corner of the street, watching his first experience, that was almost like seeing it with fresh eyes yourself. This had been a traditional way to spend the afternoon for most of your life. Not the best, but it was worth doing. It was better than you would remember now. You scrutinized the available stalls out today, and realized Baxter would have a huge gaping hole in the experience. There was no magician performing tricks anywhere. That bit of the shopping street wonder would go unknown to Baxter, even though he came all the way there. By chance, Baxter led you to an area where the shows happened in the past. Cards and coins that appeared out of nowhere, and free balloons were inseparable from this place to you. Watching Baxter out of the corner of your eyes, it struck you that you had never gone close to a tourist before. Everyone you knew well also was familiar with Sunset Bird, or at least something in the area. But he was another one of those temporary passerbys. If only it became on a different day, we could have gone dolphin balloons.
Huh?
Dolphin balloons? He read the words curiously, trying to put the concept together in his mind. Yeah, in the past there was a magician called the Amazing Alexander, who did tricks here. He had awarded participants with those balloons as a thank you. Sometimes they were shaped as animals, like the dolphin balloons. It made them extra special. Baxter stood transfixed as you continued. Voice loud enough to be heard clearly in the crowd. After all, regular balloons can be amazing enough for the Amazing Alexander. And he must have had good business, because those probably cost way more than normal balloons. Baxter stared back, starry-eyed, at your tale of the performer. You weren't expecting him to be so dazzled by a mention of a random street magician, but he was. I named my balloon Cherry. Also, a card was pulled out of the air, but I don't know if a coin was another time. It could have been, but as far as I'm aware, that didn't happen with her.
Charming.
That's adorably heartwarming. Now I want a dolphin balloon. What'd you name it? Baxter hummed as he tapped his lip. I believe I would name them Amphitrite or Kelly II. Either would be appropriate. Amphitrite, I don't know if that's how it's actually pronounced, but is Poseidon's wife. From Greek mythology, obviously. I made that click when I first done this one, and I had to double check by Google, but I'm confident to say that now. Even without seeing the shows for himself, Baxter was having a good time. That was nice. Coming here, it was more than just showing the small part of the world he lived in. You'd shown him parts of yourself. Now felt appropriate to use your privilege of asking him a question about himself. You're single, right? Cutting straight to the juicy parts. I must say, I admire the direct approach. His laid-back demeanor sharpened around the edges. His eyes were smiling at you, even if his mouth weren't. He enjoyed the implications of this question a great deal. If you were asking if he was single, it was probably because you cared about what the answer might be. His rich brown eyes found yours. I'm unattached. That shouldn't be news to you, though. That was true. Ever since his first introduction to Cove and you, when he arrived in Sunset Bird, Baxter had been open about the fact he was absolutely extremely available.
So?
And how about you? Is there no special someone in your life at the moment? Yeah. Single here too. Oh. I see. So, who was your first crush? You knew that this question was coming out of the blue, but you were curious, and since you were on the topic of romance anyway, if not now, then when? He scratched his cheek thoughtfully, trying to recall a memory. A very interesting question. It can be hard to put an exact date and time to emotions. I'd say that I was a bit of a late bloomer. I didn't develop a soft spot for anyone until I was around 12. Some people I knew had their first crushes years before that. But there was another kid who would attend the same dance hall that I did. Though we practiced totally different disciplines. I was naturally there for ballroom. They were a ballet dancer. But that's something of the past. In truth, when it comes to attraction, I find discussion on flames that are still alight to be more worthwhile. And that was the end of his story, as sparse as it was. Has there been a connection like that for you? Who did you first feel a connection with? Now, he was genuinely my first crush, because of, the soiree. But I did also put a crush down for Derek, funny enough. It was someone I know from around here. Cove, Derek, Miranda, Terry, Shiler, Jeremy, Cliff Holden, Kyra Priest, Mr. Suarez, Mrs. Suarez. Derek. Naturally, Derek had never met. God damn it. Naturally, Baxter had never met Derek, so he explained as simply as you could that he was a boy that you made friends with around 5 years back. He lived in Prison Vista City, PVC. You couldn't help but smile as you remembered all those summers ago. Derek would always be someone precious to you, even if you didn't see each other as often as you used to. Baxter's expression mirrored your own, as he took in everything you said.
Understandable.
He sounds like a charmer. I'm glad for you. Have you ever dated before? He answered you without missing a beat. I have. Nothing long term, you understand. I haven't suffered any tremendous heartaches as of yet. Being single comes very natural to me. And besides, I don't think I'm even old enough for anything to truly to qualified as long term.
Well.
But I've certainly had some experience. Let's put it that way. He tittered innocently at his apparent double entendre. I'm hoping that's how you pronounce that word. I don't really know what that's like. I've never dated personally. Well, it's best not to rush into that. And maybe the whole thing isn't your taste. There'd be nothing wrong with it. Having said his piece, his expression dimmed, and his eyes wandered lazily away. Thank you for telling me. You didn't need any more details on that.
You're welcome.
Don't mention it. You're most welcome, Callie. It was a fulfilling discussion, all told. I feel like we know each other a lot better now. Wouldn't you say? His eyes said more than his words did, and both were saying an awful lot. You met his gaze with a cheeky smile of your own. You could play that game. And then you were struck by the most obvious idea in the world. You were on a shopping street, window shopping with a tourist. Baxter would need to get a souvenir for his days in Sunset Bird. No, you would buy him a souvenir. You used the displays with purpose, rather than passively observing them. What would be a fitting memento of your town? What would Baxter Ward actually like? You consider those criteria carefully, and decide to get him a mini-carved driftwood statue. It was pale and smooth, and in the shape of a cute bird. A sunset bird, no doubt. The wood came from the very beach they were across from, and was locally carved. Baxter could literally take part of this place with him. It was a satisfying find, something that worked so well. He wanted to purchase it discreetly. When you returned to Baxter's side, his excitable expression curved up into something more typical for him. What'd you find? Here, your obligatory souvenir. It's yours now. You offered him the plastic pouch containing the recently brought driftwood statue. Graciously accepted it. Thank you, Callie. You're too kind. Before he opened to examine it where it was, he paused. I'm going to wait. Huh. I don't want to experience everything good right now. Then there'll be nothing left. I can have this joy later. So, don't worry. I'll be sure to open it while you're watching. Perhaps at the end of this outing. Oh, alright. It's your gift. Open it whenever you like. Thank you once again. You walked away from the shop side by side, with the successful purchase swinging between you. When Baxter was gone, he would only have to look at the driftwood statue to recall his days there. And you. Your gaze wandered back to the man beside you, who still hardly knew. Your gaze wandered back to the man beside you, who you still hardly knew. The one you had so little time to know. Hey, where are you from? Baxter put his hands casually in his pocket, his gaze wandering out over the crowd and the ocean off into the distance. Well, in the most immediate sense, I suppose you could say I came here from Virginia. That's where my college is located, after all. But, of course, I know that is not entirely what you meant. I'm merely teasing. While I might study in Virginia, I'm actually from the proverbial Oregon Trail, born and bred. That's the state where my home is, if you can believe it. Oh, Oregon. That's not far away from Virginia, though. Not so much. What's your hometown like? I don't know if I go around to ask where in Virginia you're from specifically. Right. I suppose I haven't named it yet. It's a little town called Golden Grove. You likely wouldn't have heard of it. Sure enough, you couldn't say you knew anything about the place. The name kind of rang a bell, though. With a name like that, I'd bet you a 20 I could guess what the local scenery is like. Baxter smiled with all of his teeth.
Of course.
Of course. There's only one thing that springs to mind, isn't there? It's built on the slope of a mountain and surrounded on all sides by the woodland. In the fall, the whole area shines with a golden and orange patina of leaves. You almost forget any other colors exist. No wonder they call it something so literal. It does make the place sound grander than it is, though. In truth, it's a small town, not quite as tiny as Sunset Bird. You can easily stroll the length of this area. In Golden Grove, you'd at least want to a bike or similar to make the trip. Though, some locals do take the walk. It's so sleepy. It's a quiet, sleepy corner of Origin, where hardly anyone comes or goes. You either move to the area to settle down, or you live there all your life to begin with. My ancestors formed into the former category. Myself, the latter. You've left now, though. Indeed, I have indeed. I guess I bucked the trend in more ways than one. That certainly made sense. Ever since you met Baxter, he seemed like the kind of guy to always be making waves of some kind or another. Something else by the way he said that made you think he meant something else by it, though. With a personality like yours, you must have stood out. Baxter chortled. Now, what could you possibly mean by that? No. While my level of openness and candor might not be strictly regular in such a rustic setting, that's not quite what I meant. Okay, I need to commit a Google search. Ah, it's French.
De rigueur.
De rigueur. It literally just means rigorous. Strictly rigorous. In such a rustic setting. It's not quite what I meant. I don't know if we read that. He hummed thoughtfully, and tapped his chin with a forefinger, trying to find precisely the right words. After a moment's pause, he continued. You have to understand that this is a small rural town, but a number of the residents are working class. There are some more affluent areas, but
To be honest,
I suppose you could say my family has a reputation in those parts as local people of means. Or perhaps put in more vulgar terms. He loaded. He snapped his fingers. Precisely. And for better or worse, everyone knows it. If you were to go there and pass my name around, everyone would know who you're talking about. He gave you a meaningful look as he said this. Please don't actually do that. It might embarrass even me. You got a sneaking suspicion that it wouldn't really fluster. You got a sneaking suspicion that it wasn't really his own fluster he was concerned about. He waved a hand with great indifference, as if to lazily swat his own words out of the air. He figured that was all he felt like saying on the subject. If I'm ever in town, I promise I won't throw your acclaimed name around.
very well.
Thank you. You needn't go out of your way on my account. Although if you ever are in the area. His smile took on an air of boyish amusement. I'm not planning on being in Golden Grove anytime soon. But, all the same, I get the feeling it might not be long before I meet you there. One way or another. Who can say? With that, his voice trailed off, and his gaze drifted to the middle distance in contemplation. How'd you like it back in Virginia? I'd say I enjoy being there for the most part. As you can probably imagine, it's quite different from here or back in Oregon, especially the humidity. Everything seems smaller there too. In California, it's like the sky goes on forever, and the mountains and horizon are impossibly far away. Origin as well. There's a scale there to scenery that just doesn't compare. Whereas in Virginia, the hills are just hills, rather than mountains. Quaint little things, really. And they sort of gently enfold everything. His gaze grew distant again, as his mind conjured up the memories of the landscapes, like he wasn't lost amongst all those quaint little hills. Another good thing about the trees, Virginia has plenty of forest cover, like Origin. So at least in that sense, I'm among the familiar. That tracks. I think I read somewhere that something like 2/3 of Virginia consists of forests, right? 2/3. I can readily believe it. You're well informed, Callie. His voice took on a hushed, affectionate quality. I must confess, I have a soft spot for trees. They're beautiful. There are these beautiful eastern white pines planted all over the college dorms, magnificent all year round. When summer comes to a close, the needles get everywhere. They fall so thick in place that the ground around is covered in what looks like one big tan shag carpet. If you were to walk underneath any of the branches, you'd be picking needles out of your hair until Christmas. You smiled at the mental image. That must be awful for you. The green and brown would ruin your whole monochrome shtick. His eyes grew wide at the mocking indignation. You have no idea. All that consideration and careful selection wasted. Though, of course, I have brown eyes, so I like to think I could make it work if it comes down to it. But you'd rather not have to make that sacrifice, right? A short, sharp grin.
You are incredible.
It's remarkable. You know me so well already. Something about the way he said that made your stomach go a little funny. Baxter inhaled slowly, almost dreamily. That's another good thing about... That's another good thing Virginia and Origin have in common. With all the trees around, and the variable climate, you truly get to experience the seasons changing. Summer to fall is especially beautiful. Colors like you would not believe. He was about to get lost in thought again, but then caught himself.
So,
to finally answer your question, yes, I'd say I like in Virginia a fair amount. The humidity is still a bit of a sticking point. He narrowed his eyes a fraction as the pun rolled off his tongue without his fully intending it. Without him fully intending it, I should say. Oh well. But at the very least, it's only an issue during the summer months. And happily for me, I've spent my summer elsewhere this year. You smiled a private smile to yourself. Yes, happily for Baxter indeed. You grew up pretty close by then. We're practically neighbours.
oh?
That's true, isn't it? Well, I might not be as close a neighbour as a certain someone we could mention when it comes to states. I grew up right next door. Lucky for me, then. The thought of this seemed to please him greatly. He got the impression that Baxter had a soft spot for these kinds of coincidences. He found this fact about him rather charming. Speaking of which, it's actually a little funny. The land my family home was built on, I suppose you could call it somewhat remote. It's a fair-sized estate, situated a little ways off from the rest of town. So, until I moved into the dorms, I'll go as far as to say I've never had neighbours before. His demeanour became more thoughtful at this. As for you, the admission came as something of a surprise. In the time you'd known Baxter, which was immediately not very long. This was the closest he'd come to being melancholy. And even then, it was the faintest glimpses. You blinked, and it was gone. A slate wiped clean. Another thought caught his fancy, and soon the characteristic grin was back on his face.
Not bad.
In any case, now we had neighbours in the truest sense of the word. And at least until my time in Sunset Bird reaches its end. It was a nice thought, in spite of the certain knowledge that it would all be soon over. The two of you shared a look, which could be best described as neighbourly. Is it hard living away from where you grew up? Do you miss it? Baxter nodded, not in agreement, but as if he had been anticipating your question. He had answered almost before you finished speaking.
No.
It was said so instantaneously, and with such genuine smile that you were rather taken aback. You weren't expecting such a candid answer as that. It's like you didn't have to think about it. Seeing your momentary look of surprise, Baxter's expression softened to something more demure. Maybe he had a reason. Maybe he had had this reaction before. Maybe many times. It's not so bad as it sounds. At a minimum, I can honestly say I wish I missed it, if that makes sense. You guessed you could understand that. I don't know how you feel about your hometown particularly, but you should at least be able to appreciate that I spent all my youth there. I'm not so jaded as to totally discount the place, far from it. But anything I like about my home wasn't exactly exclusive to that local. The US is a big country, and there are plenty of beautiful things to see wherever you go. I've experienced enough to know that. Much, at least. His voice took on a more of polite finality, not harsh, simply matter of fact. So no, I don't miss it, and I won't be going back. If my parents wish to see me, they'll be the ones visiting where I am. He snorted gently to himself. The idea amused him greatly. You got the feeling that he was enjoying a private joke at his family's expense. That could be one of the things you'd ask about later if he was willing to divulge? His feelings surprised you, but you respected them. His life was his own to live. And yet, thinking about your own life experiences compared with his made you a little sad. You couldn't imagine turning your back on Sunset Bird so easily. Not after all you'd been through here. I probably could. Having asked all the questions about Baxter's home you could think of, a final thought occurred to you. I'm guessing fall is your favorite season. He gave a wistful smile, which seemed to ache with memories of autumn reds and golds. Indeed it is. As the day went on, in idle pauses and quiet minutes after this conversation, you'd catch yourself pondering the strange man you were coming to know. More and more, you felt as though Sunset Bird formed a vital part of your emotional core. Happiness was the sound waves on the shore. The feeling of warm sand between your toes. There was something so sentimental about the bright summer days that seemed to stretch on to eternity, only to draw close in the end. Maybe you'd forever be seeing the world through sea glass. But Baxter was another person entirely. For him, perhaps the world was monochrome. Maybe it was golden, but with the color of leaves instead of sand. Talking with him made it impossible to ignore just how different your lives had been up until now. How separate your worlds were. All up until that moment when you God damn it, what is with me and words today? All up until that moment when he showed up on your street. Now your lives were intertwined. However, briefly, the forests and the sea foam commingling. Commingly? Commingling? What is that? Well, I think I might just create an entire new language at this point. I might be able to speak that one. Though you knew his love was in the trees and the full air, you couldn't help but feel happy that he wandered his own way down the shore. To you. From there, you and Baxter continued poking around until he browsed every shop on the path. He even doubled back around, leading you all the way across again for a second glance. Despite the short length, it was easy to miss some, and even after a dozen passes through, because the area was so packed. But Baxter was satisfied going through twice. He even halted at the end of the path, his attention leaving the shops and landing on you. Thank you for once more for showing me this place, and for the gift. He held out the bag with his souvenir safely inside.
Bravo.
This truly has been a fantastic stop on my California sightseeing extravaganza. He inclined his head gracefully. The shopping street was officially ahead. Glad to disappoint you. Nothing this charming could ever disappoint me. Now, I suppose I need to hold my side of the bargain. I said I would show you somewhere new, didn't I? Are you still interested in joining me in checking off an outing on my own goal list? Definitely. There's no way I'm earning you that hook. Fantastic. In that case, we'll need to return to the neighborhood. He sauntered off in the correct direction before clarifying what his plan was, leaving you to trail behind him. With your brain abuzz over all the places he could possibly be taking you, you mentally said goodbye to your old friend, the shopping street. You made it back to Baxter's rented condo and climbed into his also rented car. And for anyone who wanted to see, this is what his car looks like. With me in the passenger area. The passenger foothold. Oh man. It is a nice, lovely looking car. Though I don't see the beige fitting him very well. But it is a rented car, so what can I say? I do also love that it has seat cushions or whatever you want to call it. You typically find this in an airplane, really. Never seen it in a car before. But to each his own. He brought up the directions on his phone, though was careful not to let you catch a glimpse of the destination. He didn't even give you a hint. Then Baxter slipped his phone into the car handle slot for the future reference and began to drive. It was exciting to go for a ride in such a luxury car, especially since the endpoint was a mystery. Baxter was in a good mood too, though wouldn't answer any questions straight. He dodged your attempts to wiggle out information with increasingly coy responses. After how many questions of yours he had been answering, it was funny to have him suddenly act as if he never held the concept of sharing information with another person. He didn't push it. Inevitably, the veil of secrets would be removed. You only had to be patient. However, when you finally turned into the parking lot, you admitted it was not what you had been expecting, even if you didn't know what to expect. It was still something you would not have guessed in a million years. On top of the spacious building was a human-sized white pin. The place he'd wanted to sightsee was at a bowling alley. To repeat that, a bowling alley! Baxter led you to the entryway on air light feet. Even from there, you could hear clattering of normal-sized pins getting knocked down, cutting into disco tunes playing in the background. The front desk was advertised rates for playing per game versus per hour. Along the wall, a tower of shelves held dozens of shoes in all sorts of sizes, and past that were the shining alleys.
Alright.
Here we are. He was content, as if bowling was all his soul needed to find peace. How'd you know I've never gone bowling? I didn't. Baxter smirked, victorious. But it's good to hear I didn't fail my goal to take you somewhere you've never seen before. I thought the worst case scenario, that you would have bowled in the past. Only not at this particular location. This is even better. Especially as it's my first time as well. It is? Yes. I've never been bowling in my life. I've always wanted to try it longer than I can remember, and well, what better opportunity than when I'm on vacation? Wouldn't it be so much stranger to try it while I live my regular life? The life that, I must remind you, never had bowling in it before. It would be entirely unexplainable. Here I'm a tourist. Doing new things is part of my job description. Maybe I should pretend to be a tourist too, if they can do whatever they want. Baxter chuckled, your joke striking his funny bone. Maybe you should, it's rather thrilling. You snickered too, picturing yourself as the most over-the-top tourist to ever tourist. You'd never be able to show your face in Sunset Bird after summer was over. Hanging out with Baxter, seeing firsthand how he was living, and you were compelled to ask yourself, had you really done everything you wanted to? You were reminded of the fact that your time in Sunset Bird had its own limits, and you could very well be reaching the end of that line soon. This would be your last summer you had before becoming an adult, before taking your first steps into everything that lay beyond. Sometimes lying awake in bed at night would feel the tension like a bubble in your chest, the worry, the excitement, the anticipation of what the future might hold. Before that, how could you make the most of what remained? You weren't sure how to answer those questions, but in the current occasion, at least, you didn't have the chance to ponder them further. Baxter chimed in again. Your train of thought evaporated. Now then, should we get in line? They seem to be popular today. Or perhaps this is considered a slow day. I have no basis of comparison. But we might be waiting for a lane. It's alright. The two of you joined the queue at the counter. Though the bowling alley was indeed full, you got your booking in, and were handed rental shoes for when an opening came. Baxter flashed you a charming smile and insisted on paying. Since you were so generous to get me a keepsake. Fine, I paid at my spot, I guess you can at yours. Exactly. You laced up your shoes for a sec, and that was it in terms of finishing preparation. There was time aplenty to kill before your round would begin. Well, since you are here. So what's up with the black and white thing? He looked down at his outfit and shrugged. I don't think of it as being much of a thing. Black and white happen to be my favorite colors. Come on, no one else is going around in two-tone looks every day of their life. You even dyed your hair to match. Baxter quietly absorbed your words with a wiry smile, clearly more amused than embarrassed. For all he just downplayed it, he totally owned this strange quirk of his character. Alright, I admit it. One could say I'm rather dedicated to the aesthetic as a whole. I came to it gradually though. I've had some level of affection for black and white ever since I was a small child. Anyone who knew me back then could have told you as much. I was very forthright and outspoken about my preferences, as children can often be. But it wasn't until a few years ago that I made the conscious decision to align my fashion choices with that underlying attachment. It was around then when I came to understand how clothing could be an expression of your personality, a way of showing yourself to the world. I wanted to make a statement, you could say, and I started experimenting with more grayscale looks, and selectively tailoring my wardrobe around the limited palette. To start, like most people, I had associated black and white with more formal tastes and styles, tuxedos, dinner suits, tailcoats, and the like. But as I looked further beyond my social group, I found a diverse range of alternative subcultures, which drove the monochrome theme. There were a lot of appeal to me there as well. I ended up adapting many of them into my own personal senses of taste.
So?
The rest is, as they say, is history. It actually made a lot of sense, now that it was all laid in front of you. It was like that one small choice early on snowballed, gathering momentum as time went on, and now it formed a core part of who he was, whatever it was. But if that were the case, then the question remained, so what made you like black and white in the first place? As a kid, I mean. Oh, that. He leaned in closer and playfully threaded his fingers together under his chin. Can you take a guess? What? It wasn't like him to be around the bush. The fact that he was choosing to toy with you... The fact that he was choosing to toy with you a little about this was not what you had prepared for. You must really love zebras. You'll understand why I made that choice later when we cover Baxter's Step Forward part of the DLC. Not quite. I do have a fondness for most black and white animals. In fact, and certainly zebras are majestic creatures. But I prefer horses on the whole. Can't tame a zebra. People have tried actually. They have incredible ducking reflex and a very nasty bite. In any case, that's not the reason I latched onto black and white as colours.
See?
I'll try and make it easier for you. The crux of why I do this. The crux of the matter is this. Why do I, Baxter Ward, like the colours black and white so much? His voice took on a strange quality, placing a lot of emphasis on certain words. He was obviously trying to guide your thought process here, but you couldn't quite work it out. Wait a minute. Black and white. Baxter Ward, black and white. No way. No way. It's because of your initials. He grinned from ear to ear, the punchline finally revealed. A face of sheer delight. You got it. Brilliant, isn't it? And I have to credit you. You managed to see the picture without every puzzle piece. The truth is, my full name is Baxter Alexander Ward. 3 out of 3. He rested his chin in his hands and beamed at you. The very picture of smugness. You'd hardly seen him this content in all the time you'd known him. That's adorable. Baxter just giggled boyishly at your response, and swept his fingers idly through his bangs. I confess, as a child, I came to believe that black and white had to be a part of my identity, as soon as I realized how well it coincided with my own name. It felt like magic in a way. Names carry power and importance. Kids love those kinds of coincidences. It's a part of the mystery of youth. Magic, huh? You were reminded of something that happened earlier. Is that why you reacted when I mentioned the amazing Alexander? Because it's your middle name.
Good.
Ah. Well spotted. That's correct again. You could say I wish to be an amazing Alexander in my own right. I've always been fond of my full name. I like it too. I'm certainly that we're in accord. At any rate, I'm sure you can understand at last why I'm so attached to it, and to my favorite colors. You certainly did. Who knew that such a simple question would lead to such a strange and unexpected answer? In the past few minutes, you'd ended up learning so much more than you had bargained for about the hidden depths of Baxter Alexander Ward. The conversation successfully fulfilled the waiting period, and an attendee called you over. A lane was free. Excellent, thank you. Together you headed over to the wreck of house walls, where Baxter began to size them up. So, they come in different weights. Interesting. He touched a forefinger to his chin, pondering the choices carefully. You picked a medium ball. Moderation was key. Not too heavy, not too light. You picked up one of the middleweight balls. That was just right. It was dark ebony black. Seeing your choice, Baxter nodded approvingly.
Very well.
That is a solid option. Best of both worlds, right? Easy to hold, yet sufficient weight to give some momentum. I think I'll follow your lead. Baxter picked out an identical ball, flashing you a wry smile. It's even the right colour. Now, care to take the first shot? How about you start?
Alright.
Alright then. Let's see how this goes, shall we? He turned the ball over in his hands a few times, as though it was an alien object. He eventually figured it out. He was searching for the holes to put his fingers through. It was more than obvious that he had never so much touched a ball. I'm sorry, I looked up from the text to look at his face. Oops. Never do that while I'm in the middle of talking. I might get sidetracked again. It just looks so aggressive. I love it. It was more obvious than he never so much as touched a bowling ball before. After more fumbling, he managed to work out the grip. Wish me luck. See, that's why you don't pick up a bowling ball first. You put your hands all over the ball and while it's still on its rack, and find the holes and then just figure out where you put your fingers and thumb. No one for hesitation, Baxter took a couple large strides and sent the ball rolling. It hurtled down the lane, straight on at first. Oh dear. You watched as the ball curved massively to one side. It reached the end of its lane, barely. It clipped the very back corner pin, which fell right over it as the ball dropped into the gutter. 1 point for Baxter. He turned to you, a grimace playfully. Can you tell this is new to me? What? Really? And here I thought the goal of bowling was to pass the ball through without it touching a single pin. If only. That would be a savant. So would I. I get another attempt this time, correct? I'm still a little unfamiliar with the rules. You weren't any more certain than him, but the overhead scoreboard appeared to indicate that the round wasn't over. Guess so. I see. Well, here's hoping I can do a touch better than that. Baxter retrieved his ball and rolled his shoulders, taking form in front of the lane. His brow was furrowed in concentration. He wasn't as hasty as before. He took his time to line up the next shot. 1 step, 2 step, a 3rd step, and release. It shot off like a cannonball, barreling ahead. It still curved slightly at the last moment to knock one of the center pins head on. 5 more points. Baxter nodded to himself, satisfied at the improvement.
Not bad.
60% success is plenty for a first attempt. It's all part of the learning process. I must say, I'm enjoying myself so far. Go turn, Callie. You eyed the pins at the far end of the lane, gauging the distance. A breath in and a breath out, you lifted your ball back in what you hoped was a good posture. Then you took a few steps forward, let your arms swing down, and released. Nice! You knocked a fair number of pins down. Bowling wasn't so bad, you thought. Maybe you had something of a knack for it. Baxter gave a generous round of applause.
Exciting.
An excellent way to begin. Just like Baxter, you had one more attempt left. You waited for the ball to return, then lined up another shot. This time the ball zipped down the lane and tipped over some more pins. You didn't manage to get them all, but it wasn't bad. The triangular arrangement was reset again, and the scoreboard flashed up with Baxter's name once more. As the game proceeded, you and Baxter settled into a rhythm. You exchanged a friendly chat between frames, with an odd quip or a moment of celebration thrown in. It was a comfortable way to pass the afternoon. As an idle moment, you found yourself wondering more about Baxter again. The two of you would be there for a while, and yet you felt... The two of you would be there for a while yet. And if you felt inclined, it wouldn't be too hard to strike up a more in-depth conversation. Pun very much intended. I was wondering, what's your family like? Baxter straightened up properly. He'd guessed you would ask about this sooner or later.
Honestly.
It's not the most exciting story, all told. My immediate family consists of my mother and father and myself. Better or worse, the worse, I'm the only child. That tends not to surprise people. His voice took on a slight littering quality, as if he was reciting something he'd practiced many times over. In many ways, my parents are the prototypical example of success. They're fluent, sophisticated, and have a wide-reaching and influential social circle. As families go, I suppose I'd have to say that we are a happy set. As sometimes happened with Baxter, you weren't convinced he was giving you the whole picture. So, what about in general? His eyes narrowed knowingly, and his mouth pressed into a thin smirk. You're not content. I might have known. I love my parents, but that's not to say they aren't complaints to be had. It's a mutual feeling. They understand care through the lens of control and protection. That's been that way ever since I was a child. Ever since I was young. In that sense, they treat me like no different from a child. But, of course, they are quite educated, esteemed, and a tad old. As is their company most days. That's not the environment to act as a kid. That meant I've always been expected to behave with maturity of someone their own age, or perhaps even older somehow. A bit of a paradox, isn't it? To do everything an adult would, while getting the respect of an infant does. As for me, I think of myself as much more of a free spirit at heart. I'm my own person, and I'd like to enjoy life in whatever I see fit.
Well...
You could say I'm a bit of a rebel. He said it almost furtively, like he divulged some important personal secret. Oh, so you're a bad boy. He grinned, leaned closer, and met your gaze with a meaningful look. There was a heat to it that spread all the way to your your stomach.
Absolutely.
The very worst. You're courting danger simply being near me. His voice dropped a fraction lower. That makes you something of a rebel too. A heartbeat. A pause. Then he broke eye contact and moved away. When his gaze returned to you, his usual affable smile returned with it. Speaking of your parents, where are they now? You didn't mention them visiting Sunset Bird. They're at home, most likely. I don't know for sure. Huh. That was odd of you. Why did Baxter come here during his semester off instead of going back to his family home? I didn't want to stay with them or go back to Origin. At all, in fact. More rebellious behavior on my part, you see. His tone was a strange mixture of proud and indifferent, like he knew how frivolous it sounded, but decided to own it anyway.
Wow.
Mother and father agreed to me vacationing on my own, under a condition that they would have the choice of where I stayed. California being fairly close, and Sunset Bird being so quaint. Not to mention our prior excursions to the area. They concluded that this was the easiest way to keep me out of trouble. They had it all planned out. A safe summer holiday for their only child. You couldn't help but be surprised at that. He had said a similar thing when you two first met, actually. That his parents had sent him here to keep it being from exciting. Sure, Sunset Bird was small and sleepy for the most part, but it was still the California coast, and Prisma Vista City was right there. Well, part of that was unexciting, especially since he had his own rental car. Maybe your parents should have thought this through a little more. The summer in SoCal is the worst they could come up with. As you posed this question to him, Baxter's casual demeanor underwent a change. His customary relaxed smile took on a wicked sharp edge, and his eyes flashed with a devilish mischief. The change was so surprising that you couldn't help but imagine what his prim and proper parents would think if they were here to see it. He shifted closer, conspiratorial, and spoke in a hushed voice. Do you know what the legal age requirement for renting a car is in the state of California? 21, 20? That's how old you are, right? You're right on the first count. It's 21. He said it totally casually, without almost inflection. I, however, am 19. It took a moment for his words to register. Wait, Baxter was 19, and the legal age for renting the car was... Oh. You were rendered momentarily speechless. All this time you had no idea. Baxter carried on speaking, not noticing or politely ignoring the implosion of your thought process was undergoing. My phone fell, and my charger is so fucked that it can't even lift my phone anymore. Because it's kind of at an angle. I've been trying to fix it by charging my phone, but you know, I don't know how it bent to an angle. It's an anglefish now. The truth of the matter of fact is that my parents, being uncreative people, had full confidence that I wouldn't be able to rent a car. That's why Sunset Bird was chosen as my destination.
It's doable.
But I don't have the same issue. There are ways around the age limitation, as you might have gathered. Since I'm over 18 and have control over my own bank accounts, I honestly don't know why they bothered trying at this point. The whole situation tickled you a little. Had to be extra work getting hold of a car, and all Baxter did with it was sightseeing. Even when law-breaking, there was something so proper about him. So, how did you manage it? It wasn't that difficult. Honestly, I didn't have to do anything awful. Don't worry about... I didn't have to do anything awful, don't worry. I have a large number of social connections myself. Members of the dance circuit, acquaintances from the country club, a few fellow students from college, miscellaneous family friends. For The list goes on. The point is, I'm fortunate enough to have a connection in the area for an extra car, which was mine to use, provided I covered the costs. Plus a little extra, of course. The throwaway nature of that last part gave you a pause. Max's idea of a little would probably put Cliff Holden's $20 to shame. Okay, that's good to know, I guess. Splendid. Glad that's squared away. He gave you a saccharine smile, all honey, and that, for now, was that. In what felt like no time at all, you arrived at the final frame of the match. You glanced up at the scoreboard. The points had been neck to neck all game. Even in the final moment, it could still go either way. Baxter went first, opening with an 8. He subtly tensed in disappointment. Going the extra double rounds from getting a strike, he wouldn't be able to guarantee the win. In spite of the setback, he didn't give up. Laser focused on the pins. He comfortably scored a spare. That meant he got one extra round. It ended up in another spare. He hummed in satisfaction, proud of his own performance. A good way to finish. Now it was all down to you. In spite of Baxter's bonus spare, your hopes of victory were still alive. You looked into a spare on the 10th frame, earning one more turn for yourself. But it was officially your final chance to take the lead. A strike was your only hope. You remained calm and shot your shot. The ball made a smashing contact with the set. It toppled like dominoes, being hit by a bat. The corner pin wobbled, holding out on a total collapse. And ultimately, it fell. You hit a strike. Your victory was secured. Then, Baxter came over and offered you his hand to shake. A very model of sporting behavior. You took it. You fought hard until the end. Baxter gripped your hand firmly, and the two of you shook. He grinned.
Thanks.
Thank you for the game, Callie. I had a lot of fun. I tried my best, but you got the better of me in the end. Congratulations. Better luck next time.
That's sweet.
I appreciate the encouragement. It seemed as though he was happy to have played at all. Never mind that I didn't win. The joy of a new experience was what mattered to Baxter in the end. The game reaching its conclusion, you wandered over to the main counter to return your rental shoes. Your sightseeing bowling adventure was finished. You left the building. Baxter was quiet. He must have had something on his mind. You lifted his face to the twilight sky, then met your eyes. Well, we've had our fun, and the day is getting short of time. I suppose we could return to the neighborhood now. That was a question, not a statement. Baxter touched his chin in contemplation. Hadn't struck you as an altogether thrilled by the idea, and coincidentally said the exact thing out loud.
To be honest.
To tell the truth, I'd be disappointed to go home. Would it be too much to ask to stay? Would it be asking too much for this to last a little while longer? I'm not sure about you, but after the thrill of that bowling match, I've become rather hungry. Could I treat you to dinner? Or at least we could attend a meal together. Now that Baxter had mentioned it, you realized your stomach was totally empty. You've been out and about for hours. Honestly, I'm starved. Even the bowling balls were starting to look appetizing back there. The prospect of having more opportunity to hang out lightened Baxter's already chipper mood. That's excellent. He furrowed his brow in thought, tapping a forefinger to his cheek. His attention drifted away from you as he casted his mind around for ideas. Something caught his fancy eventually. His eyes narrowed, and the corners of his mouth curled upwards.
Perfect.
That could work. It's ideal, even. Care to share your idea with the audience? His gaze swept back to you, and and he grinned wholeheartedly. So far, today we've focused on locations which were new to one or both of us. That's been good fun, but it may be nice to end our little outing on a different note. Perhaps you see where I'm going with this? He tilted his head playfully, giving his smile even more of a bend. Baxter was nudging you in the right direction. For our meal, we could go somewhere that's familiar. I'm sure you could think of a suitable place. Somewhere you'd both been before? Oh! But of course. There was a perfect venue for an evening meal. One you and he were both familiar with. You mean Cyprus? The country club where you first met all those years ago. That was exactly the kind of place Baxter would prefer. He beamed, relieved that you'd caught it on.
Bravo.
Exactly. If that's agreeable with you as well, I can take us there right now. Yeah, I'd like that. Having settled on a place to eat, Baxter led you to his car with a spring in his step. The prospect of a jaunt to the Cyprus obviously delighted him. You sped towards the general direction of Sunset Bird. In the midst of its namesake period of the day, the faint wisps of clouds overhead were painted a pale orange. When you pulled up to the country club, the sun was hanging behind the trees, which line the golf course. You were led out to the recognizable dining area right away by a host, where a table for two was nestled in a corner. He passed you menus and excused himself. A woman in a handsome waistcoat and jacket was beginning to light candles for the upcoming night. She paused to attend to the new guests. Good evening. I'll get you water immediately. Is there anything else I can bring? Good evening to you. One moment. Callie, I am familiar with their offerings. Would you like to order now? Yes, please. You had mentally gone over what you wanted on the drive. Baxter smiled sweetly at the waitress, who readied a notepad to take your orders. It got sorted shortly, and she took her leave. After that, there was nothing to do but make yourselves comfortable. It felt nice to have some time to relax. You reclined in your chair, stretching out your legs, and idly peered around. You'd come at a good time. It was the middle of the week, and earlier in the evening than many people would go out for dinner. As it was, you had the entire place to yourselves. Baxter shifted in his seat, the wicker creaking quietly. He rested an arm casually over the back of it. The bag with the souvenir was sitting to one side on the table, in front of him. He had brought it from the car. He must be intending to open it here. It looked like he was a birthday boy, preparing to unwrap his present at a celebratory meal. He chuckled, imagining that. A soft sigh broke the comfortable silence. It's a pity. It's so quiet. I would have loved for there to be some music. He flashed you a lopsided grin. Or dancing, even. That's asking for too much, I know. However, when I visited the Cyprus, either here or home, it's livelier than this. Such a shame, but I suppose they can't have a soiree every night. At least we were able to dance last time, right? Baxter dipped his head in agreement, his brown eyes sparkling of the color amber in the sunset.
Understandable.
That's true. It was certainly a night to remember. I was beyond pleased to see such a good partner in the crowd, and finding each other again after all this time. Well, it's nothing short of a miracle. He threaded his fingers through his hair and laughed softly, as if struck again by the absurdity of it all. It's times such as these where it feels as though you're close to something magical, wouldn't you say? The fingers of fate reaching through time to touch the strings of our lives. It could have so easily never happened. That's what I find strange. A few choices made differently, and we might have never even crossed paths at all. See, that's why I didn't bring Cove or Derek. We wouldn't have met him, and we wouldn't be having this reminiscence session. He shouted dramatically as if the prospect chilled him despite the summer warmth. It doesn't bear thinking about. The serious note to his words was gone in an instant, replaced once more with his usual playful timber. He struck a thoughtful profile, resting his chin in his hand, and then peeked at you slightly from the corner of his eyes.
You know,
I first saw you standing there on the edge of the dance floor. It was captivating to see someone my age so put together. It can be easy for formal wear to fade into the background at those kinds of events. Everyone looks the same, but you were able to make the style something of your own. You were easily the best dressed partner going. I was delighted to take your attention as well, if only for one dance. You met Baxter's gaze, despite the faint flush in your cheeks, and gave a wry smirk. I'd say thanks, but I bet you say that to all the people you dance with. Baxter grinned, despite your teasing, his voice driven with sarcasm. Of course. Absolutely everyone I reunited with on the Hans trip to California gets the same treatment. All of them. Baxter laughed at that, the sound ringing clear as a bell over the empty patio. The grass and the water as the sun's dying light caught them all. You miss this place. It's been too long since your last visit. Excuse me. Your train of thought was interrupted by the sound of the waitress arriving with your food. 2 steaming plates was put in front of you. Then you're alone again. Neither you nor Baxter wasted any time tucking in. The food was as good as you remembered. And, by all accounts, Baxter was content with his choice too. But you didn't necessarily have to eat in perfect silence. You searched for a topic of conversation. What are you studying in college? I'm studying for a business administration and management degree. The expectation is that I will manage and/or administrate at some company in the future. He tilted his head, aware of the silly way he put it. Nothing too specific, I'm afraid. Fuck's sakes. Studies going well? I'd say so, yes. Of course, I've only completed a few semesters worth. It was in the early days yet. Counting my eggs in before they've hatched would be a bad habit for an aspiring administrator to develop. It might not surprise you to know that I can be a touch particular. I know the importance of coherence, with individuals acting in a well-coordinated fashion. And I'd like to function well for systems to operate smoothly.
honestly.
I confess, you could call me controlling at times. Not with people, but with processes. Especially when it comes to enacting plans. I'd much rather act under my own steam than follow someone else's lead. I'm really flexible with the personal, not the business aspects of life. He spread his palms matter-of-factly. But that's enough about my aspirations. You know my story, so what about you, Callie? I'm curious to know what the world has in store for you further down the line. I'll have you know that you are looking at a fully fledged high school graduate.
Really?
Oh, really? My congratulations. It's an achievement to be proud of. If it's not too much to ask, where do you see yourself next? College? Straight into a career, perhaps? You told him your future plans. I can tell you. You never openly talked with anyone before, but Baxter had asked, and told you about himself. So you didn't want to dodge the question. At your reply, Baxter moved in slightly, his eyes sparkling. Since you had responded positively, he had no qualms about letting his curiosity show. I'm a lot like you. My plan is to study at a private college. I also want to pick up full-time work so my parents aren't covering everything. Baxter attentively waited for you to finish, and then nodded encouragingly. I think that's wonderful that you have something you're aspiring to already. I wish you the best of luck. It's an exciting thing taking the first step on your journey. You never know just where you'll end up. Take me, for an instance. I've never lived outside my hometown until I left for college, and look at me now. All of a sudden, I'm in California of all places, revolting with a charming new friend. His brown eyes met yours briefly. Isn't that delightful? Life is nothing if not full of unexpected developments. I'd like to think we're doing what we can to make the most of that. I didn't have to be here, and you could have pretended that no one had disappeared in your... I didn't have to be here, and you could have pretended no one new had appeared in your small town, and gone on like usual. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Glad to hear it.
I'm glad to hear it. I feel the same about finding something where things go from here and now. Besides, we've only been talking about work and school and such. There's much more to life than that. The world would be altogether too dull otherwise. You might not remember me mentioning it, but when we first met... You might not remember me mentioning it when we first met, but my most fulfilling hobby is ballroom dancing. It's a true passion of mine. You seem to remember him saying something along those lines. It's important to have genuine hobbies, don't you think? He was right, you had pastimes you loved too. Speaking of hobbies, I'm an artist. Baxter inclined his head, attentive to your words.
I see.
That's interesting. I had no idea. I'd be glad to hear more about it sometime, if you care to elaborate further. I can't say I have any experience in the area myself. That'd be nice. It's something I really enjoy. It doesn't... I don't. That'd be nice. It's something I really enjoy. It doesn't have to make me money. I feel the same way about ballroom dancing. It's something that has interesting value to me, beyond the potential to earn a living from it. Although, to be clear, it isn't entirely devoid of, shall we say, remunerative benefits. His tone took on a slight edge, and his eyes brightened with amusement. Those with a certain level of skill, there's some money to be had in the competitive scene, prize rings and such. Your mouth flew open in mocking indignation. Wow! And here I was thinking dance was just an innocent pastime for you. I should have known you had something up your sleeve. Baxter laughed heartedly, his face apologetic.
I apologize.
I'm sorry if I deceived you. But I wasn't lying when I described it as a true passion of mine. Any additional compensation is nothing more than fringe benefit. You made a show of thinking about it. I'll forgive you. Someday. Maybe. Baxter snorted quietly. I'll be on tenterhooks until then. In any case, thank you for indulging me on the topic. I had fun. We passed the rest of the meal with idle chatter, exchanging anecdotes and silly stories. Everything was easy with some good food at hand. Eventually, dinner ended and dishes were cleared, and the bill was sent for. One of the things you discussed was who would pay. You'd pay for his, and he'd pay for yours. It was a little more fun that way. And now. He reached over to place his hand on the wrapped-up souvenir. It had sat patiently next to his plate for the whole meal.
Exciting.
I've been eagerly awaiting the right opportunity to open this. No time like the present, won't you agree? Yeah. I want to see what you think. And you will. He pulled the gift squarely in front of him, with a great deal of ceremony, as though it were a beautifully wrapped present with an enormous bow. on the top. It was generous of him to play pretend. There was certainly nothing fancy about a cheap plastic bag, with a "Thank you for shopping" printed all down the sides. He closed his eyes with attentive fingers, reached inside and pulled out the souvenir you brought. When he lifted his lids and finally saw it for the first time, his brows raised in appreciation. He turned the driftwood statue over in his hands, appraising it from multiple angles in the warm, dusky glow it bathed in. Appraising it from multiple angles as the warm, dusky glow bathed in gold. He brought the little wooden bird up to level with his face, to meet its hollowed eyes. He smiled softly, then held it back up to the light at arm's length. What a charming creature. A perfect mascot of a sunset bird, wouldn't you say? The craftsmanship is delightful. Actually, I saw this myself and considered buying it. I'm delighted we've been reunited by a happy chance. Almost like the two of us. It's a wonderful gift. I couldn't have chosen better myself. Having a drop of California sunshine to brighten up my college dorm is the very thing I need.
So charming.
I'll be reminded of you every time I look at it. Thank you, Callie. You're welcome. I knew you'd like it. I'm that good. Baxter chuckled, and you were happy to see it. For your big talk, it was a relief to know that Baxter appreciated the souvenir you picked out. He gingerly placed the driftwood statue back in the bag. For safekeeping. It'll be destroyed if anything happened to it. Once the bill came and went, Baxter cleared his throat and made a stand. Shall we? He checked around for your belongings and nodded. Yeah, let's go home. Wonderful. You headed through the club and out to the parking lot. Night was beginning to fall in earnest. As you settled into the car, you found yourself gazing back at the cypress. In your head, you thanked it for so many years of fine food and happy memories. It had been a good day. A lifetime of good days. And because of Baxter, it offered you even more to be grateful for. That meeting was a gift to you from your old friend. The last of the daylight was long gone by the time you finally returned to your neighborhood. Baxter had gone more slowly than when you had left, content to enjoy the drive, almost as if he was trying to delay the end of your sightseeing trip for a little while longer. You felt the same. It had been a special day in many ways. You sighed, forlorn as the car pulled onto your street at last. Baxter parked and killed the engine. Then he shifted in the driver's seat, his hands still on the wheel, to face you. I really appreciated your company today, Callie. I have to confess, I had an itinerary planned in the event that you declined my invitation. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't want you to feel obligated to humor me, so I'm not lonely. I managed perfectly well. But in the end, I'm grateful that it didn't come to that. It was indefinitely preferable to have the chance to spend a few hours in your company.
Thank you.
I don't know if you feel the same, or if you did indeed tag along as a favor to me. Either way, thank you. Baxter finished his brief speech and released the wheel. He made as if to get out the car without waiting for a response. I wanted to spend more time with you. He glanced back, eyes bright. Baxter was awfully pleased, making no attempts to hide the fact. You realized that he'd really been asking you a question, in his own roundabout way. He was hoping you'd enjoy his time. He was hoping you'd enjoy his being. He was hoping you'd enjoyed him being there too. It was nice that you could make him happy with such a simple thing. Baxter cleared his throat and shifted in place. His pretend escape plan hadn't included taking off the seatbelt. He undid it then. You moved to do the same, and the two of you got out of the car and into the warm night air. A goodbye was on the tip of your tongue when Baxter's voice gave you a pause. Callie. You turned to where Baxter stood. Baxter was leaning casually against the hood, one hand in his pants pocket.
Forgive me.
Forgive me. It's been a long day. I'm sure you're tired of questions at this point. If you'll indulge me a little while longer, I did have something else in mind to ask. That didn't bother you. You smiled to show that, if anything, you'd been the one asking most of the questions. Go ahead. Out of the corner of Baxter's mouth lifted a crooked half smile. He stood up properly and he continued. Thanks. Well, I must repeat, today has been particularly lovely, and all the lovelier for having spent it with you. And I wonder, would it be too forward of me to consider our time together a date? A beat. You blanked. Wait. A date? Your voice came out a bit squeaky with surprise. Not for the first time today, Baxter had managed to catch you completely off guard. It wasn't lost on him either. But whereas before Baxter might have been delighted in getting a reaction out of you, the expression he gave now was gentle, friendly. How funny, considering the entire more than friendness of the subject. He ran a hand absent-mindedly through his hair, searching for the most delicate way to put his bluntness. Have I read the signals wrong? It wasn't the underlying intention when I asked, I assure you. I got the impression of what this may be, or could be, partway through. And if I'm not entirely off, I'd be far more curious to inquire on whether I might consider any future outings together as dates as well. Getting closer.
To cut to the chase, I'm asking you out.
I was about to speak. Oh! To cut to the chase, I'm asking you out. That is, if you'd like to spend more time with me, and assuming you'd even want to date a man. Why would you want to date me? I don't like to be around the bush. It's that simple. I want to take you out on dates because it's easy to see how it'd be a nice time. I like being around you. A smile tugged at his lips again, recalling the events of the afternoon. Just today, you showed me around your town. We went bowling together, of all things, and it was wonderful. Then we accompanied each other to a fantastic dinner. You made an effort to come and know me better as an individual. And you were even kind enough to present me with a thoughtful gift. I could not have been happier. By the time he finished, Baxter's smile stretched ear to ear. If you don't feel the same, that's fine. I won't be upset with you.
Of course.
And I'm certainly not intending this to be a grand romantic overture. Of course. You won't believe me if I was claiming to be your one and only for the time being. He placed a palm to his chest and met your gaze with a crooked smile. I'm nominating myself as a suitor for the season. A charming summer adventure, no more, no less. So, a fling, basically. Baxter laughed, self-efficating. You could certainly put it that way. In the end, the point I'm trying to get across is that there are no high stakes here. I don't care what the label you choose to put up. I could be your boyfriend or nothing at all. And you can also change your mind without consequence if you find out it's not what you imagined further down the line. I'd be open to doing that. At your words, he beamed at you, his face bright in the darkness.
Lovely.
Thank you. You've already given me so much in my time here. I've been very fortunate to have you as my neighbor. And now it's something else. His tone was measured as polite as ever. But you couldn't help but hear an exciting edge to words. As if he was internally bouncing on the balls of his feet with anticipation, because he wouldn't do it on the outside. The smile of Baxter's was your favorite. Seeing it, you were already glad to have accepted his offer. On top of your own personal feelings, it was cute to have such an impact on him. Underneath his peculiarities, Baxter was a sweetheart. Once the initial rush had died down, your thoughts drifted to more practical matters. What would you say to people? What would you call this thing between you? You put the question to Baxter, whose eyes lifted up along the edges. Would you care if I told my family or not? My friends are going to find out, I'm sure. What a delightful first concern. It's up to you how we go about it. If it's not something you feel comfortable talking about, then I won't insist. My preference would not be to treat it as a secret, however. I'm proud to be doing this, but again, I'm a visitor, and this is your home. The choice is ultimately yours. I'd rather not tell my mom and sister. I'll be teased. Noted. The possibility hasn't occurred to me. If we can avoid it, that's all to be good. Now, as it pains me to say, I shouldn't keep you any longer.
I'm here if you need me.
Thank you again for the wonderful day, Callie. If you ever want another, you can call or text me. I'm able to drop what I'm doing and come see you. Or alternatively, you're welcome to come by my place, whenever it strikes you. I'll be in touch too, though, so don't feel pressured to initiate. He lifted his hand in a cheery wave, staying put in the ordeal to see you head home.
Good night.
Have a good night. At this closing moment of your day together, it struck you how much of an impact he had on you in such a short time. You cast your mind back further to 5 years ago. It was still surreal to think about the mysterious boy who vanished without a trace once the night was over. Not only had he shown up after all this time, but moved into the neighborhood. And now, you were dating? The absurdity made your head spin. Your chest ached with profound emotion that you didn't have a name for. Like you were seeing the beauty and complexity of the universe laid bare. But you could mull it over those thoughts another time. It was getting late, and he was waiting for you. In your parting moment with Baxter, you left him with a parting kiss. Baxter was initially frozen by your initiative. You outpaced even him, but not for long. He quickly leaned in to return the kiss. He rested his hands on your shoulder as he tilted his face and stretched up to meet you. It was kind of adorable. His lips were soft against yours. The kiss was chaste, tender. Your eyes were shut, but you could feel his mouth curl upwards with contentment. You opened them again, and there was his face, as dazzling as the stars. Being with him that way was warm and comfortable. Warm and comforting, despite the fact his shirt felt really stiff. Fashion over comfort with Baxter Ward.
You're very good.
I must say, I didn't anticipate you'd be the one to pull a move on me so soon. A daring move, it's that, but it's far from unwelcome. He laughed quietly behind his hand. There was no chance of you making Baxter shy, but there was definitely coyness to his temperament, and a faint flush to his cheeks. Well then, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, Have a good night, Callie. Good night, Baxter. You let each other go, at least for the moment. Baxter had begun the farewell, yet made no move to leave. He watched you cross the street to your house. You turned on the threshold and waved one last time. That familiar grin was the last thing you saw before the door closed behind you. You'd see it again soon enough. Aw, look at him. He's blushing. It was strange. It was a strange feeling to be back home after such an eventful afternoon. So much happened in the space of a few short hours, and so much had changed. Of course, you were right then. Of course, where you were right then couldn't be described as without excitement. You were greeted almost immediately by footsteps approaching from the hallway. Sweetie, you're back! I had the door open. Mum's laugh rang out from behind her. Out of hand into the fire.
No.
Whoa there! No need to jump on Callie without giving them a chance to take their shoes off. For all we know, it's been a very informative and tiring day. Ma came up in front of you, and Mum appeared over her shoulder. You could see the smirk on Mum's face, along with the pointed implications in her choice of words. For all that, Mum appeared to be tempting Ma's enthusiasm. They were both guilty of speculating what you were up to all day, and now that it was their chance to finally find out. While her wife rested a hand on her shoulder, Ma beamed angelically, the picture of innocence. She was the last person to bowl someone over the minute they got home. Honest.
Huh?
What's going on exactly? Your sister's voice drifted over from the couch. Liz had been sitting watching TV, but spun around to see what the commotion was about. Her show forgotten. The gang was all there, and in only a matter of seconds. So, how did it go? Did you have a nice time with that neighbor? Oh, so that's where you've been all afternoon. Out with a gentleman caller. How charming. Your sister leaned over the back of the couch with a biting grin on her face. She could have given Baxter a run for his money. Yes, Callie was getting to know Mr. Ward. The rest of us would like to know him as well. You want a scoop on Baxter? I got the deets. Ma clapped her hands together, delighted.
Good job.
That's my Callie. I've been dying to know more about him ever since he got here. What'd you find out? Mum patted her shoulder.
You alright with that?
Lanny, surely you could stave off death long enough to give Callie some space. I'm sorry. It's exciting, but I can wait. With that, the immediate attention around you dispersed, and you were free to collect your thoughts. Slowly, everyone drifted towards the kitchen counter, where they sat ready and waiting to hear the whole story. You kicked off your shoes. Ma wouldn't allow you to drag out in the house, even when she was trying to curry the favor. And then you went over and pulled up a stool. You filled them in on everything that happened. Your mums both nodded along, eating up each factoid you shared about your time with Baxter. Ma, in particular, was engaged and asked plenty of questions. Liz played it cooler, resting her chin in her hands on the counter, but you could tell she was listening keenly. When you mentioned eating out the cypress, her eyes widened in recognition. As the night wore on, your mum and Liz ended up chatting amongst themselves, engrossed in the conversation to the point where you were able to slip away unnoticed. On the way upstairs to your room, you found yourself glancing back at the front door, as if to catch another glimpse at Baxter over the street. You really hoped he got what he wanted out of the sights he saw. Sunset Bird was a special place to you. If you were lucky, then maybe Baxter had come to realize that as well. You'd certainly reached You certainly reached more of an understanding of him, one way or another. Yet you are positive that there was still much buried underneath the surface. So much more to his character than there had appeared to be at first glance. But you didn't mind. You'd grown to know each other for such a small part of your lives. Of course, a single outing won't be enough to quantify an entire person. What was special was that it might not be always that way. However, he was the bowling alley, shiny. Currently, he was the bowling alley, shiny and new. But someday, you might be familiar with Baxter as you were with the shopping street and the cypress. This day was only a wonderful start. And that's all we have for today's episode. It's a long one for sure, but we've had longer. And I say that because of our transitional periods. They take a lot. So, yeah. Thanks for stopping by, and I'm sure I gave you your fill of Baxter. Whether or not it was the way you plan on going through with it, I can't say. Though I will say we will actually be taking a dent in this scene, and you might notice that Hang goes blank on both sides sooner or later. Like I did say, we will be doing Baxter's version of Hang and not Cove's, because Baxter is my baby boy. That sounds so weird, I know, but it's true. Oh, I should probably tell Owl when she gets back, so she else need to do. Sightseeing first. Like the first one she ever does. It has to be sightseeing. And a specific way to do it. Well, that's all I can say for now. Have a good rest of your day, and I will see you when I next see you. Bye!